it's Hannah. Shakira the Snake and I are here to tell you about your latest Take and Make craft for teens. So what we have this time are these cute little felt kitty crafts. We're gonna give you some felt and needle and thread so you can sew your own little kitty. There's a pouch at the back where you can store things like pencils. So stop into the library today and get your kit. All right, so I have your supplies here in front of me. What you're gonna get is a cat template on paper that you're cut out and then use that to cut out your felt. You're going to get some stuffing. You will get a few fabric pins. You won't get this many, this is just how it was packaged. You'll get 3 or 4 of these. You'll get a little sewing kit that has needle and thread inside and some extras. You will get an extra spool of thread because the thread that's in the sewing kit is not very much, so you'll need more thread than what comes with that little kit. And last but never least, you're going to get some random scraps of felt and some larger pieces to use to make your cat. All right, let's get started. So first things first, you're just gonna take your cat template and cut out all the pieces like this. So you can see all the pieces are somewhere. Yeah, they're all here. The number on the piece shows how many times you need to cut this out in felt. So we need, this is the body, we need 2 pieces of this shape, of this body shape, and this is the pocket that goes in the back. So you just need 1 piece for the pocket and so on and so forth. So all of them are labeled, and as you can see, if you're confused as to where they go on the cat, the shapes of course are going to match. So like this piece goes here, so you can easily figure out where everything goes. All right, so the next thing you're going to do is figure out what felt you're going to use for your cat. So your kit isn't going to have that many different pieces of felt. Probably it will have 1 large piece of colored felt like this. We have all different colors. And in this sample cat, the body, the pocket, and the tail are all the same color. And you do need 2 pieces of this body shape, remember. So it will fit. You can cut out 2 pieces of the body, the pocket, and the tail on this large piece of felt that's colored. But you can do it however you want, as long as you get the right amount of pieces out of your felt. You need 14 total, including all the little bits. Then you're fine. But it is simplest probably to just use the large colored sheet of felt to cut out the body, the pocket, and the tail. But you guys are very creative, so I'm sure we'll see lots of different examples. All right, so the next step is basically just to cut out your felt shapes using your paper cutouts as a template. So I cut my felt in half because I know the shape each piece will fit even when it's cut like that. I just think it's a little bit easier when you're cutting things out to deal with slightly smaller pieces of fabric, but everybody can do it however they are most comfortable. So you're just gonna pin your templates to the fabric. Oh, that's not. So you want to penetrate down and then poke it back up, making sure that it penetrates both the paper and the felt, so it's secure enough onto the felt that you can cut around it. And you can certainly use all your pins on 1 piece of the template and do it more slowly, but I'm being a little slapdash, so I'm just using 1. But typically, when you sew from a pattern, you would put pins kind of like around the edges. So you might use like 4 pins on 1 piece to make sure that it's secure, but this isn't as precise as a piece of clothing, so I think this is fine. I'm gonna just cut these out. Okay, so I have cut out the body and the pocket and the tail out of the same color of felt. So basically, I'm not great at cutting, but as long as your cat basically doesn't have any weird parts that are jutting out beyond one of the other parts, these need to fit together like this. The body, of course, is gonna fit together, and then the pocket goes on the back. So that's fine, and then this is the tail. So as long as it's roughly matching, I think it should be fine, because this isn't an exact sort of sewing project. Don't follow my tips if you're trying to make clothes though. Okay, so next what we need to do is cut out the little accents out of felt that are going to go on the cat. So honestly, I'm not great at cutting, and these templates are very small, so I just eyeballed it. I didn't pin these to any felt. I just knew I need 2 smaller rectangles and 4 larger ones, so I've done that here. And you have the body of your cat in front of you, so you'll know, you can see if the pieces are too big. So like that, they're bigger than the template, but like I'm fine with that. So I just need to cut out eyes and cheeks out of whatever color. So I know the eyes are a little bit smaller than the cheeks, so I'm gonna do some orange eyes. Okay, so now I have all my pieces. You can see I have my little cheek pieces cut out and my little eye pieces. He's gonna be kind of a Halloween cat. Anywho, now that we have those all cut out, all right, so the next thing we're gonna do is sew on the face and little accents onto our kitty. I'm just gonna use the spool of thread that came with the kit instead of the sewing kit thread, but you can certainly use the other thread for this part because you don't need as much. But I already had this thread out, so I'm just gonna use this. I'm gonna try to thread my needle here. You can wet down the end of the thread so it sticks together more, and then it'll fit just like this into the needle. Normally what I do is pull the thread all the way through the eye and then match the ends so they're the same length basically, so you have technically like a double thickness of thread. Okay, so once you have your thread, you're just gonna tie off the end, and you'll want to do it at least a couple times. So I don't know if you can see, but you can see that there's a knot that's pretty big, so we'll just cut off the excess. Your thread can't come off of your needle now unless it breaks. And then when you start threading, this knot will prevent the thread from just pulling out of the fabric. Okay, so now we're ready to start sewing. So typically when you sew something like this, you come up from the bottom because that way the little knot in the tail that's at the end is on the back, so you can't see it. So we'll just, you can do this a number of different ways, but the easiest way is just to pull it up so you can see that the knot is on the back, and if I pull it, it can't come through. And then you just go back down. And the closer you go back down into the fabric to where you came up, the smaller the stitch is gonna be. So there's not a lot of thread showing. And then on the back, you can move your thread over. Oop. Nope, that's not far enough. So just go to the other side, poke it up. So you're just poking up through the back again, poking it up, and then poking back down. So you can see that the stitch is, this stitch is small. You can barely see it from far away. And then to tie it off, you'll just stick your needle under the last loop of thread, you'll start to pull it through, and then you'll stick your needle through the loop before it closes. And you'll just do that a couple times. And there you have it. Okay, now I'm just gonna do the second eye. If you have enough leftover thread from before already in your needle, you can just retie the knot at the end and start sewing again. I did a little bit of a shorter piece of thread, so I just put a new piece of thread in here and tied it off. So we'll just stick. So, and the reason too to do a double thick strand of your thread is that it's a sturdier stitch, so it's less likely to come loose. So it's good to do double thickness of your thread in your needle if you have enough thread, which is why we gave you the extra spool. All right, so we'll just cut that off. And we have both of our eyes. Okay, so now I have sewed on both the eyes and the cheeks onto my cat. This is the back and this is the front. So as you can see with the cheeks, because the felt is pink and the thread that I used is a light pink, the stitching blends in a lot better and you can't see it as well as much as you can with the eyes. So that is something to consider if you sew in the future. Normally you pick thread that matches your fabric so it'll blend in, unless you're specifically going for some kind of contrast, which you can do. And I know that we're just giving you a random spool of thread so it might not match, but that is something to consider in the future if you sew. And in order to save time today, I'm not gonna sew on the little accents, but everything is the same. You would just thread up your needle and sew it on just like this. Honestly though, if you are new to sewing and all of this is kind of daunting to you, if you want to, you could certainly glue all of your accents, even the eyes and the cheeks, onto the fabric and no one would know. So it would look the same, it would look fine. The main part is just to sew the cat together, so if that's the main thing that you want to sew with this kit, that's fine. So I might glue my accents on later. We'll see. Okay, so we are gonna move aside the body piece for now, and we're gonna take this back piece. This is the pocket. And then what you wanna do is sew the tail onto the back so it sticks out just a little bit like this. So you'll have the two body pieces sewn together, and you're gonna stuff this so it'll be a little poofy, like a little plushie, and then you're gonna sew these all together like this with the tail sticking out like that. And this back part is gonna be a pocket. So here we go. We're just gonna sew the tail on. So the instructions say to do a whip or a felt stitch. You're just gonna stick, when you're sewing something where you might see the knot at the bottom, you can stick your needle through the top portion of your fabric and then just loop it around the edge, and then whoop, stick your needle back up through the same hole but through the bottom this time of both layers of fabric, so that way you cannot see the little loop now, you just see or not the, you can't see the knot now, you can just see this little loop. So that's one way to kind of hide your knot. And then what you're gonna do is you're just, once you've pulled it up like this, you'll just loop it around the bottom again and try to stick it through. So this is called the felt stitch, and it's a really easy stitch. You do want to try and get your, I'm not being careful at all right now. You do want to try and get your stitches to look even. But I am terrible at that, and I'm not paying any attention. So my stitching looks horrible, but it is fine because it is for me. And if anybody looks at my cat, I'll just say that he's a little bit lopsided. Anyway, so I'm doing this really fast. But this is another reason to use thread that matches your fabric, because it's not as obvious when you sew crooked. In my case, I don't really care today because I have other things to worry about. So whatever. It is crooked. It is obviously crooked, but I don't care. For reference, this is what an even stitch looks like, and this is what we all strive to do. So if you are a neat person, you can sew it a little bit straighter than I have. Okay, so here's my messy stitched tail, but it's fine for me, I don't care. Next, what we're gonna do is sew all three of these pieces together. So this is gonna be the body, which we're gonna stuff so it's a little poofy, and then this back piece is gonna be a pocket. So we're not gonna sew this to the cat because we want this to be open. So we're just gonna sew the bottom and the sides. Now the instruction says you wanna leave a little bit of the bottom unstitched so you can stuff the stuffing in. I figure since we're not gonna sew this top part and we have to stop at these edges, we can just start here and go all the way around and stop here and then just stuff it from the top. So you can do it however you want, but let's get started. Okay, so I'm gonna start to sew my cat together now. You'll probably want to sew this like with one piece of thread, because it's fine if you run out of thread. Once you see that if you're running out of thread, you can just tie off your last stitch that you've done and then cut it and then start again. It's just nicer to not have to do that in the middle of sewing something. So if you can, it's nice to cut thread long enough that you can go all the way around what you're sewing without having to tie it off in the middle. But there's no shame in running out of thread. So on the instructions, it says to do a blanket stitch, which is a pretty stitch. Oops. Very well. But anyway, so just pull this through. So the blanket stitch, when you're pulling your first loop through like this, what you're gonna do is before the loop closes all the way, I know it's kind of hard to see, so this is the loop, you're just gonna slip your needle in, and then you will do your second loop and start pulling it through, and before the loop closes, stick your needle through your next stitch. And again, I'm not being very even, but you get the general idea. So before this loop closes, you pull your needle through, so you can kind of start seeing, since my stitches are not the straightest, so it's not the greatest, but you can see that there's a line between, you can see more easily on your instructions that instead of there being a gap between all your stitches, there's just like a little line. So it's kind of a pretty design. So if you want to do your cat that way, you can. It does take a little bit more time and a little more thread. So because I'm not in the mood for that, I'm just going to do my slapdash lazy sewing. Okay, so I finished my terrible stitching. I did a few more blanket stitches so you can kind of see the line that's between the stitches, and then I just did regular whip stitch. Does not look great because I did not do it evenly, and it looks worse because of the contrast between the thread color and the felt color, but my sewing is always a little bit slapdash. So at this point, you should have left an opening between your cat body pieces that you can stuff. So we will do that. All right, so he's stuffed, and you can sew that open part shut just like you did with the rest of your cat, and then you'll be left with a little pillow and a pouch on the back.